You start. Okay, it's Monday. We're talking missions. Welcome to Missions Monday. And today we're speaking about a very interesting topic, missionary children, kids on the mission field, otherwise known as MKs. Traditionally, and in the last 50 years, a lot of people have had a lot of interesting thoughts about it. We've been concerned about the future of MKs, the life of MKs, and what happens with them. And we want to talk about that today. So in the studio, we have Sebastien Palmieri, Pastor Luigi and Isabel's son, served in Togo. We also have Daniel Post on Zoom, and we have Ruth Hulett on Zoom. So welcome.
Thank you.
Wow. I have a small thought.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. I was thinking, it talks about in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, about bringing up children in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And there is this thought that when you're on the mission field, that I have to serve my family, but I have to also serve the ministry and serve the work of God. And many times as men of God and women of God, we make a choice. We feel that we're being forced to make a choice between my family and between the work of God, and that one has to suffer. But I would look at it this way. I would suggest this. I would suggest that children and the call are both from God, that God gave them both. And if God can give them both, then God can lead us in both. And there'll be times where both are important, but one is a priority. There's going to be times in the work of God when my kids, my children, my family is a priority. The work is important, but in this moment, my family is the priority. And then there's going to be times where my family is important, but in this moment, the work of God is the priority. And all of it really is the work of God. So I feel the God who gives you the blessing, the God who gives you people, the God who gives you family, the God who gives you the call can also be the God to lead you in the priority of the moment. So I don't think you have to sacrifice one for the other. I think you have to hear from God about what is the priority for the moment. Was thinking about that. Ruth, I know you've been how many years have you been in the Balkans?
Ooh, let's see, from 2006.
Okay.
So about 14, 15 years.
Wow. So you pretty much grew up on the mission field. Have you sensed that as you came up that at times with your parents on the field that there were times when you felt like as a family, the work was a priority in the moment, and then at times, okay, the family was a priority in the moment?
I can't say that I personally have. For me, when I was growing up on the field, it was pretty much one and the same. Yeah, I can't really say that I've had any. I guess the only time where I had to make a decision was when I went to Bible college. And that was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But as I was growing up, really, family and ministry was very much one and the same. And even now that I'm here, again, it's the same also. Right.
So you kind of feel like it's basically because my family's in the work and I'm in the work, we're in it together as a family. So I don't see this separation. Because I know in some missionary teams, there is a bit of separation. And even in your family, for instance, there's times when you're doing the church schedule, but then you're doing things as a family in the home and other places, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Every once in a while.
Once in a while?
Yeah, rarely.
Yeah, wow. And let me ask you the same question, Daniel. Have you ever seen the difference between the two, or the separation between the two?
Yeah, I mean, so for example, on Saturdays before outreach and Sundays before church, there would be an inordinate amount of, I guess, stress and attack on the family because of the missionary work that we were doing. And so there actually tended to be more of like chaos and confusion on those days because of the missionary work that was happening. But I, like Ruth, also experienced that it was almost never a thing where, okay, we need to take a week or two or even 3 or 4 days to figure out a family situation. It was always directly tied into the missionary work. So we were always in the work, on the field together, and when we would discuss things or try and work out issues that were happening on the field, typically it would be just completely transparent. Hey, this is what we're going through, this, and we're going to do this as a family on the field. So it was never separated like that for me either. That's
great. I like that. I like that blended approach, because when you try to say that this is that and this is that, when you separate, you tend to isolate, which brings up an interesting point, Sebastien. There's also this thought with missionary kids that because they're in the work so much that they're isolated from the rest of the world, that there's this, and then their argument is with some MKs that they feel like they've missed out. I lost my grammar years, I lost my high school years because I was on the missionary field. So one person said to me, well, I never got a chance to go to a movie, I never got a chance to do all these things that other people that my age do. So they feel deprived. That's one complaint that a lot of MKs have. And then on the other side, there's some MKs that say, well, I don't miss that because it wasn't that important, and what I had was also good. Have you seen that at all?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think we used to come home to France every year for a month or two, depending on what the schedule was like. And when we came back, it was a time of finding out where I'm going to fit in again. Because here are my friends into these kind of movies, into these kind of fashion things, into these trends. And here's me almost like 10 or 20 years behind on the movies and wearing clothes from 20 years ago, also because we bought everything secondhand on the mission field. Yeah. And yeah, you had to learn to be flexible, for one, and number two, to understand, okay, this is what my family's doing, and I see the value of it and the fruit of it over there as I'm growing up. Obviously, when you're little, it's a little bit different, but as you're growing up, you start to see the importance of what you guys are doing in the mission field. And so you take it as a sacrifice. You understand, you understand that it's worth it. And yes, there are differences, and yes, you feel a little bit, different from the rest of your peers and the people that you're connecting with again, but that it's definitely worth it. Yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Because I think that's the thing that a lot of MKs, they have this notorious reputation, PKs and MKs, have this notorious reputation that once they break free from their parents, once they break free from the mission, it's like escaping prison. And then they get out there and they go run wild and, I'm free, I can't believe it, I broke the chains now, And it's interesting that they tend to go and bleed into these exotic things. They become, when I was in Uganda, there was a missionary kid who was with his parents for like 20 years, and when he got free, he got into dirt bike racing, he opened up a bar, he just went way out there, because he said, I'm free, no more this, no more that. Because when you're growing up, you kind of feel like, well, I'm doing this for my parents. I'm doing this, this is what my family is doing. So it's hard. You kind of find that as MKs grow up, a lot of them don't grow up with personal convictions about God. It's what my family was doing. So then when they become old enough to make decisions, they start having their own decisions, like you said. They get old enough and they're like, I don't want that, because that's serving God as a missionary is what my parents did. I don't want that, because for several reasons. One of them is maybe I don't have the same call that they have, number one.
Sure.
Number two, I don't like that whole scene. I want something different. I want to be my own individual. As long as I'm doing what they're doing, I'm going to forever be a child. But when I get away from that, then I'm free. And then that's why they tend to run wide and run high. You ever thought about it like that?
Yeah, I mean, I could see how some missionary kids would think that way. And I can see why also. I think part of it is when the parents don't include their kids in what's going on, like you were saying earlier. I think if there's a separation between the life that the kids have on the mission field and the life that their parents have on the mission field, then you feel like your childhood was wasted.
Wow.
Because you didn't bear any fruit. It was all your parents. And now, like you're saying, finally, I'm free from their schedule.
Yeah.
Let me get on with my life.
Mm.
My life has finally begun in a way. But I think for me, and probably for both of you guys, it was very different. We were very much involved in everything that was going on, whether it was church or the children's ministry or visitations or outreach, whatever it was, we were going to go as a family.
Mm.
And I think also seeing how much of an impact our family as a whole had on the church and on the people there. They saw us, as a family. They saw the relationships. They saw the parent-children relationships. They saw the kids and siblings, interacting with each other. I think that had a big impact looking back on everything. So I think, there's obviously a balance to that, and I think I liked what we did. Saturday was kind of like the family day
Okay.
when we
As opposed to Daniel's day where it was complete chaos.
So Saturday was like, maybe take a trip to the beach as a family, watch a movie with the kids. It was kind of like that kind of a day. We started with chores, actually, which wasn't my favorite part of the day.
I think that's global. And always Saturday morning is when you start with chores.
Okay.
Nothing fun happens to
I
the
had my
chores.
little list. Everybody came up with a little list of things to do, But so yeah, for me, I never regretted those years. I saw the things we were missing out on. I could see them clearly when we got back. But I also saw the fruit, and to me, the fruit outweighed the missing out big time.
Ruth, do you think about that sometimes when you were younger? Did you feel like you were missing out on something? 'Cause I think that's the question. If I don't see the fruit, then I'm going to see what I'm missing out. You ever feel like that?
That's an interesting subject for me, because for me, whenever I returned to America for a couple of months, every year I would see what I was missing out on.
Mm.
And I would be so happy to have missed it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, but no thank you. Wow.
True.
That's amazing, because most of the time when I talk to MKs and PKs and on the field, there was always this complaint like what you said. I'm 17 years behind. I didn't see that. And your friends ask you, did you see the latest? You're like, no, I didn't see that. Or why do you still wear that? But then again, you see the trouble, the what's behind the fun, right? You see the issues with it. You're like, no, I'm kind of glad I don't have to have that,
Yeah.
Because sometimes people tend to put on you their expectation for life. And if your life doesn't match their expectation for life, then your life is not valuable because you don't do what they do. I remember I was working with somebody and their wife was overseas, and because she didn't have an email address, it was like, oh my God, you're so deprived. You don't have an email address. What's wrong with you? They're shielding you. Like, oh my God, you don't have it? An email address? Like you won't exist. How do you survive? I'm doing fine without it. But no, you have to have it. Sometimes we want for people things that they don't want or need for themselves. And at that age, when you're young, there's a lot of peer pressure. Like, I have to have what my friends have because I want to fit in with my friends, So that challenge is there. So for you to say that is huge. It's rare. I've never heard a young person say that about, no, thank you, I don't have to have that. That's settled. That's a mature statement. Daniel, did you ever experience? Go ahead, Ruth.
It was mostly with singers. Whenever I come back to America, they'd be like, oh, have you heard this person or that person? And one of my favorite things was seeing their reaction when I said,
yeah.
Was their reactions when I said no. And I'm so glad, excuse me, that I wasn't into that, because I really if I had followed a lot of these singers, especially back when I was, in my teenage or younger years, they're sadly just not very good to follow.
Wow.
So I'm very blessed that I didn't get deep into that.
It's amazing. Daniel, do you ever get that, like, you feel like you're missing out, you know? Because, I mean, some of the places where you were, Daniel, were a little bit more third worldish. You guys were less exposed. You were more secluded. And then when you get out of that, sometimes you kind of feel like wow, I just messed up. I never forget one time when I first went out, I came back and found a new kind of Coke. I was blown away for 3 months by vanilla Coke. Like, what? This Coke with vanilla in it? Who did that? Where did that come from? So it's shocking, the little things.
An angel from heaven.
Yeah, an angel came. He touched the Coke and it became vanilla Coke. So, Daniel?
Yeah. Wow. This is a huge question, and it has so many different portions to it. So I think I'll explore the two avenues, the one where Seb touched on a little bit, and then the one where you just asked me about my personal experience. So I'd say, first of all, the difference between missionary kids, and we had a lot of missionary kids in Kyrgyzstan that approached the mission field the way that you were talking about, where they felt kind of like prisoner to their parents' call. And they kind of felt like their life had been put on pause or taken away from them for the years that they were there. And it was actually very, very counterproductive. It was very, very harmful to them because of their mindset, because of the way that they approached what they had. And actually it caused a lot of conflict between me and a lot of my peers in a local international school that were missionary kids. Because I thought it was just the dumbest idea ever for them to approach the missionary field that way. Because, instead of seeing all the opportunities that they had to learn a new language, to learn God's faithfulness and his provision, to be a part of a faith work, to be able to see people's lives change, transformed, to be able to see God's working on the heart, in our hearts through us, where we were insufficient and our skills, capacity, our gifting was not enough, and God still came through. Like, all of those things are humongous, and to be a part of another culture, and these are things that many kids our age were not experiencing and wouldn't have the access to experience. And then they were worried about, not having peanut butter and not having Mountain Dew and not, and not knowing, and not knowing the latest trends or the latest, the best thing to wear or the coolest thing to listen to. And it seemed so surface and stupid to me. So it really caused a lot of conflict in my life. Because I was constantly clashing with those kids. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the mindset that Ruth had and that I had, and Seb, was that we were there for something much bigger than ourselves.
Wow.
And we were there on a mission with our parents to do something that was something we might not ever have access to again, or maybe we will. But really, it was a huge opportunity for us. And I think that I didn't see the missionary field as a connection somehow to my parents. I found it as my own personal calling. So when I was 12, we moved to the missionary field when I was 8. And then when I was 12, it really became super personal, and God kind of did a transformation in my mindset. But our mindsets going onto the mission field was with our parents the same way.
Let me pause you right there.
It's our whole family's call.
Let me push back right there for a second. You said at 12, God kind of made it clear for you and made it personal, because that transformation is rare among PKs. I mean, MKs, very rare. The majority of MKs don't go into missions second generation. They're not negative. Some of them do walk with God, but very few actually become second generation. And some of the ones that have done second generation usually do it out of loyalty to their parents. My parents started this church in Congo 30 years ago. We're continuing it round 2 because it's all we've ever known, but a personal call. Can you take us through that process a little bit about how God spoke to you as a 12-year-old about and shaped you toward missions today?
Sure, absolutely. So, there are a few things. I got saved when I was 8, just before we went to the mission field,
Wow.
and then at 12 years old, we went to a missionary conference in Kazakhstan, Almaty, Kazakhstan, and I had been struggling because we were fully homeschooled, so I had been struggling a bit with finding kind of identity and fitting in, and that's always a struggle for missionary kids. We always have a struggle a bit with finding home and belong, that you are actually a part of something, and that you should be there, not feeling like an outsider. So that is something that most missionary kids struggle with. And then when I went to this conference, basically what happened was, I think that was when Pastor Stevens was, he had the heart issues, I guess the strokes.
Yeah.
And so all of the people gathered together, and it was just an overwhelming feeling of the presence of the Holy Spirit there. And so I got baptized when I was there, and I felt like God specifically called me to become a missionary, to go to Bible college, and that my life would be separated for the gospel. And so those 3 things I took away, and it was overwhelming. There was no doubt in my mind that those things God had called me to. And I think all of the messages that I heard from Pastor Love and Pastor Shibeli about who I am is not determined by others, but by who God says I am. And the identity that I had was not based on people's opinions, but based on the Word of God and concrete things that God has promised. And so from that point on, I did have a lot of conflict in my life with people who didn't see it that way. But my life was very much focused around receiving and giving the gospel, and also becoming someone who was available for God. Isaiah 6 says, it really became personal for me. Isaiah 6 is where Isaiah is seeing kind of a vision of God, and God says, "Who will go for me?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, here am I, send me." And it wasn't something that my parents had said. You know, even though my parents were completely all about, hey, we're here in this together. The life that we have is not just ours and yours. We're all here together. God called us as a family. And so it just became incredibly personal to me at that point. And from that point on, I just said, God, you know, wherever you want to send me, I want to try and go.
Seb, I was going to ask you this question. He mentioned this a little bit. Daniel mentioned this too. Education. Normally with MKs, the options are homeschooling, partially or completely, or there's also, now there's actually online learning. There's a measure of online learning for MKs now that wasn't there. I know that, Ruth, your eyes got big. Yeah, there's online learning now. It's like, because back then it was mom with a math book. So, so it's online learning. There's also, you can go to the schools, the local schools that are there, whatever country you're in. But that's usually kind of a gamble in a third world situation because the education might not be what you're looking for. And then number 4, there's international schools. And the international schools have the highest quality of education, but they are ridiculously expensive. Unless you've got some kind of scholarship or some kind of help, they're more expensive than even private schools here in America. They're very exclusive, they're very expensive, and difficult also to even get into in some countries. So I find that with a lot of MKs, they struggle with how they're educated. It kind of creates adversity in the home because of you being homeschooled, and then everything, all the lines get blurry. Ruth, You were homeschooled?
Yeah, I was homeschooled.
Describe your experience.
Oh boy. Looking back at being homeschooled, I am very privileged to have done my education that way.
Yeah.
But during homeschool, it was very difficult because I was an only child, so I had no siblings. Thus, no classmates, no friends really.
Yeah.
And it was difficult because it caused a lot of familiarity problems in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Both my mother and my father taught me. So my father became my parent, my school teacher, my youth pastor, and my overseeing pastor.
Wow.
So with all of that, it caused a lot of familiarity problems. However, I am very happy to have been homeschooled because, I was being taught at the pace that I was learning. And of course, when you're on the mission field, you have to have a flexible schedule with the amount of trips that we took and also with visitors coming. There was no skipping days, it was just postponing days. And I'm very happy to have been homeschooled and to have gone through that experience.
Yeah, the thing that you mentioned, I think, is common with most homeschoolers, even here in America. The social maladjustment because there aren't a lot of classmates or there aren't a lot of people around when you're homeschooled. So it tends to be a lot of, but now here in America, for instance, there tends to be homeschool athletics. There's competition, there's teams, there's things that they do to help make up for that. But you don't get a lot of that on the missionary field when you're being homeschooled. No. So it's kind of like, and then the thing I've talked to a few parents, I find that many of the parents who homeschool, that familiarity is there because he's dad, he's the teacher, he's the pastor, he's all these different roles at the same time, and trying to be at a young age, trying to distinguish is a challenge, tremendous challenge. That wasn't your challenge alone. It's a big problem. I think sometimes out of necessity, our MKs are homeschooled, but not so much out of choice. Daniel, were you guys homeschooled as well?
Yeah, so I was homeschooled all of my education except for the year before I came back from to Bible college.
Okay.
So outside of my 9th grade, I believe, year, I was homeschooled fully. 9th grade year was kind of crazy because it was a transition from that to a international school, and it was once again a big struggle connecting with people. And actually, the people that I mostly connected with was the South Korean missionary kids, because many of them, the way that they approached the missionary field was much more family oriented, much more, hey, we're in this together. This is a calling from God. Outreach is important, and giving God your heart is really important as a child, not just as the parents in the situation.
Seb, what are your thoughts about? He mentioned the word connection, that struggle with connection. Now you had siblings.
Yes.
So that kind of helped you a little bit, right?
Yes. So I had my my older sister who's only 2 years older than me.
Wow.
So we pretty much hung out during homeschool. My other sister was way older, so she kind of did her own thing. But I had the advantage of having other missionaries help me with homeschool, and I think that was a huge blessing. There was Pastor Michel Texier taught me math.
Wow.
For some years.
Who wants to be taught math by Pastor Texier? Wow.
So that was a privilege and a blessing. I had, another missionary teach us cooking, which was fun. Another one teach us English.
Cooking.
cooking.
Wow.
Imagine that. That was like a specialty class.
Electives.
Couple of the ladies, one of them taught us, it was French for us because we were a French family.
Yeah.
We learned music with another one. So
Wow.
it wasn't super difficult for me in that aspect of not having my mom and dad. I think my dad taught us Italian.
Wow.
And then my mom did, some other classes. My mom taught us Bible every morning. That was one thing she taught us, which, at that young age, I was like, oh, mom, kind of thing. But it was a blessing, though, looking back. Those Bible classes every morning really made the difference in my life. I know it for sure, for sure. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a different experience. I went to high school to the International French School that was in Lomé. So that's where I did my high school. So
What connections there?
it was tough. The first year going there, man, I was like, what kind of world is this? The school world, and everybody already knew each other, and I was the new guy that didn't know where to go next and what to do, how to
No one
how
likes
to
the
be.
new guy. Yeah. No one likes the new guy.
So it was a huge adjustment, but it happened. It took me about a month or so, and then that's the one thing about Missionary Kids, though. I think we learn to be flexible.
Mm.
You have to, in order to survive, you have to learn to be flexible.
Mm.
And so, no matter where you are, you quickly learn to fit in. You quickly learn the ways. You quickly learn the different things that are going on, how people live in that area. So, yep.
If you could sum up your experience on the field with your family, give me one word.
Oof.
I'm going to ask both you two the same question, so start thinking.
I'd have to think. Can someone else go first?
Yep. I know who's ready before. I know Ruth is not at all, but Daniel is definitely ready. Go, Daniel.
I'd say privileged. And the reason why is because I learned to value the things that actually are valuable to God instead of the world. So my life was not based around material things, but it was based around spiritual things. And because of that, I learned to appreciate the soul and the heart and character a lot more than cars and houses and material stuff. So like we grew up dirt poor. I mean, below the poverty line here in the States. But over there, we never felt like that. It was a third world country, so money went further, but it was more so that never really came into play. Like we were never hungry. But we were definitely very close a couple of times. But God always provided.
Wow.
And it wasn't a question of whether God would provide. It was, when. And so I think we were privileged to see that. And that, for us, God and church and the mission wasn't a Sunday fling, but it was a daily life, that was modeled by my parents. And the love that they showed to other people was so critical in the way that people connect and not just spiritually, but just on a physical level. Yeah. And so it gave me a lot of privilege to be able to learn interpersonal connection and communication and focus on the important things in life. And it made me a lot better at adapting to wherever I've been in life.
Yeah, that's that word that Seb mentioned, flexibility. But I like the words you mentioned about privileged, because it's a rare word you hear when you hear MKs describe their season in the field. Deprived is the word I've heard over the years, deprived, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's the complaints on the message boards, and that's the complaints and when you talk to them, deprived. So the fact that you use the word privilege, and I like the phrase you said, where you said, I never felt like we had poverty. It's amazing, like you never felt deprived on the field. But once you got off the field or you started living in comparison, oh my God, there's no Taco Bell here. There's no Chipotle's. We were deprived. Suddenly I'm deprived, you know? But like you said, having the right mind about it, and to get that at a young age and to learn that, having the right mind is really a really key to seeing it as not being a bitter experience, but an opportunity. Ruth?
Absolutely.
Well, Daniel stole the word that I was going to say.
You could use an adjective. You could go sideways with.
I was going to say privilege. It was the first word
Okay.
that came to my mind.
I'll give you a hint. You could use the same word. It's okay. But tell me why.
You know, he touched on it, I think, just right. And while he was talking, another word came to my mind, and it was wonderful.
Huh?
It was life on the mission field is wonderful because you really live like in wonder all the time. And you know, it's so, you know, every day it's like, what's next? So for me, it was definitely a time of just wonder, because, you know, when you live by faith, that's really how you see life almost. It's a life of wonder. Because, you know, you could wonder when's the next time you're going to eat. But you can also wonder, like, what is God doing in this person's life, or what is God doing in my life at the time?
That's good.
And it was just an amazing experience that I had on the mission field, and I would never trade it for anything. So
Yeah.
I definitely say privilege, but also it was wonderful.
I like that.
And it's still,
I think the proof of what she's saying is that she left her mom and dad to come to Bible college.
Yeah.
And then went back with her mom and dad on the mission field.
Which is super rare. I mean, most guys, once again, it's that jailbreak.
True.
I'm out.
Yeah.
And I can visit.
See ya.
I can visit.
See ya.
But now that I've gotten a taste of, you know, 5G internet, Chipotle's, all of a sudden now I will go back and visit. But I like what you said. Living on the field has taught you how to live by faith in life. So that you've lived a life on the field and you've had to learn to live by faith, and then you have learned to live by faith in wherever you are, whatever you do. And as much as we're told to live by faith in 2 Corinthians 5:7, we so often live by sight. And in that field, to get that at a young age, it is wonder. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Okay, Seb, you're out of chances.
Yeah, I mean, I could go with, like, you know, a spiritual word, like, you know, set apart, which is true, you know, something like that.
Give me a Seb word.
Honestly, the first word that came to my mind was fun.
Wow.
That's the first word that came to my mind. Because honestly, for me, we went there when I was 6 years old, and from 6 to 18, I just had fun.
Wow.
I straight up had fun on the mission field. To the point where when my mom and dad, you know, decided to leave when I was 18 years old, I was like, you guys are out of your mind. I'm not leaving. I got my friends here. I got my life here. What are you doing to me? You know, you're extracting me from my little world.
And bear in mind, he's in Togo.
Yeah.
One of the top 5 poorest countries, deprived countries in the world.
Yeah.
But for you, leaving was a mistake.
It was. And I think one thing that I've learned, probably the biggest lesson I've learned from my mom and dad in my life, is that people are the most important thing. Wow. on the whole world. There's nothing in the whole universe that's more important than people. And so that's how we lived our lives on the mission field. That's how I hope to live my life now still, to always value people more than, you know, a job, a home, whatever you name it. Your differences between you and someone else, just put them aside. People are just too valuable to put things in the middle of you. But anyways, so fun. Yeah, I mean, I got up early in the morning. I used to get up at 6 o'clock, you know, just go chase some birds or whatever, climb some trees and do whatever I could. And then I couldn't wait until 3 o'clock when my friends came out of school so we could go play soccer and just, whatever it was, marbles or whatever we could do on the street,
Wow.
until sunset. And then that was time to come home.
Give me a description of something fun you did that was crazy.
Okay. You mean like the terrible stories of what we did, or the good kind of stories?
I don't want to go R. We don't have to be G. We don't have to be G, but I don't want to
Okay.
go R. So you got to float between PG and
All right,
PG-13.
all right, let's say this. We like probably 8 or 10 of us on a Saturday morning. We got up like at 5 o'clock, went to this lake where you could catch like a fish a minute. It was like these tiny little fish, like probably this big, at the most. And we catch like hundreds, maybe 100 or 200 fish.
Wow.
We fill our buckets, run home, fry them all up, and eat them with this like side of some dish that you used to make over there. We don't have it here, but yeah, that was one of the things we like to do on a Saturday morning sometimes. Or I'll go hunting for birds with our slingshots and make little barbecues. Birds like this big, when the feathers are all taken off, you stick them with toothpicks and you like roast them over the fire. Yeah, I mean we did a whole bunch of amazing fun things. I mean that's all I can say. Yeah, there was amazing times on Outreach with my parents, and I even went to Bible college when I was like 13 years old. Took some classes in the evening.
Wow.
So there's amazing things like that, and you're part of the. Maybe you play an instrument or you can sing a little bit, whatever. We did that kind of thing too. But
Wow.
yeah, it was
That's
just,
good.
I mean, that's something about my dad. He liked to have fun. So whatever he was ministering or at home or whatever we were doing, he always put fun into it. So
When it's fun, it's hard to walk away. It's true. Wow.
sure.
Ruth, just tell me a situation where you had a lot of fun in the Balkans.
In the mornings?
Anytime.
Okay, good. Huh. Okay. One time it was Wednesday night and we had just finished service in Tirana, and we looked out the windows and it was snowing. I live in Albania, which is a Mediterranean country. So snow is something you just don't see very often.
Right.
So we looked outside and we saw it was snowing. And at first we think, I mean, this is amazing, it's snowing, but no chance that snow is going to like stay on the ground or it's going to snow enough for it to accumulate. I think that night enough snow fell that we were able to have like full snowball fights and build a snowman. And this was like the first time that some of these people had ever had snowball fights. And I'm talking people who were in their 20s and 30s.
Wow.
And building snowmen. And it was so much fun. And the smiles on everybody's faces was, unforgettable.
Wow. And if I'm not mistaken, you're a master snowball maker, if I remember correctly.
I am. I don't remember.
Let's just say you're a master in my mind, anyway. Snowball maker. You had some snow here at NBCNS, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I saw the pictures.
Aha. Daniel, how about you? One of your funnest times?
So there was a very interesting Mormon family that was over there as missionaries as well, and we became friends with the kids in that family, and the oldest kid, Matt, he was an absolute genius. I mean, really, really smart. And so he actually designed some little boats for us to go, and we made boats at his house, and we actually sailed down like sailboats. We sailed down with just extra wood that they had around the house. We sailed down the sewage canals Yeah, in the city.
Oh.
And it was great. It was so incredible. It was so much fun. But we would we got on this little boat, me and a few of my friends and him, and we sailed down the sewage canal, and it was a blast. It was so much fun.
Wow.
And
there it is.
And we did that probably for a couple of weekends in a row. It was great.
Nothing like sailing down a sewage canal. Wow. Man, fun. Okay, the time we have remaining, I want you to think of this for a second. If you had a chance to talk to a parent of a child on the mission field, what advice would you give? Ruth, you're first.
If I had a chance to talk to a parent on the mission field,
Yes, that has a child, or at least one. What advice would you give?
wow. Man, I have no idea. Make someone else go first.
Seth will go first.
Okay. I would say take a risk is what I would say.
Okay.
Take a risk of not shielding your kids, of getting them involved with whatever's going on in that country. Get them immersed as much as you can with the culture, with the kids, with whatever is going on there. I know one thing that made a huge difference for me was that our home was wide open. People could come in, go out, in a safe way, of course. You don't, obviously don't want to make things unsafe, but kids would come in, adults would come in. We would always have people around, and to me, it made a huge difference because I didn't feel like, okay, this is our little piece of our country here in our home. This is my little embassy, and I'm going to go out every day into this foreign country. It was all one and the same.
Wow.
We lived there. We ate the food. We mingled with the people, and I did not see us as missionaries as much as people living there with other people. So I think for kids, when they feel like their lives is separated from whatever else is going on in that country, I think they feel like they're missing out. They feel like they're different. They feel like they want to go back to where they belong.
Yeah. That touches what Daniel said. Having this sense of belonging. Okay, you're trying to fight and find this sense of belonging, and you're feeling isolated already. So as a parent, I can actually make it worse by isolating you from the work. So
Correct.
then you're isolated from what's happening around you, and you're also isolated on your own when you meet with people. So then you become more insecure, even though you're a member of the family. So yeah, it's a good point. Okay, Daniel, you're number 2. Ruth, you're last.
Oh gosh, there's so much on this topic, but the first thing that I would say along the same lines of what Seb just said is that so my parents actually, they allowed us to travel around the city pretty much, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but pretty much freely. At a very young age, they treated us like adults, and it was because we were very, very immersed. We spoke Russian pretty much fluently, and so that connection was there with the people and with the culture, and so it was a lot easier for us to be involved in the society and be able to get places because we were so immersed. And I love that. That's such a great point. The other point I would say is that is to not make your children do anything, but to show them that they have a valuable part to play in the mission, so that they realize that this is something that not only is, a dream or a goal or a calling that God has put on your heart, but also it's something for the whole family. So that connection to the mission and the mission field is also really important. And we grew up with homeless kids and homeless people and people that were thrown out of their families, and we were like an amoeba family. We just adopted everyone into our family and just engulfed them, but that was so incredibly important for our development as kids, because we were able to not just hey, here's the outside world and it's kind of crazy and scary and it's something that's really different from what we're used to, or our language or whatever, but it was like in our home. And we got to see exactly how our parents loved people inside the home, outside the home, and it was all the same. So it became something that was just natural in our lives as well. And so I think that's super critical to the mission. And I'd say mindset. A mindset is absolutely everything. If someone has the mindset that, if a child has a mindset that they're trapped there, that they're doing something because of your calling instead of theirs, they will become rebellious. They will hate you for it, But if they don't, if they feel like it's their own and that it's a privilege, it's a blessing to be there and doing these things, then it makes all the difference in the world. And you end up with our experiences, Ruth's and mine and Sebastian's, where we're just so thankful for that experience as children.
Beautiful. All right, Ruth.
Well, that gave me time to think and also to listen to what others had to say. And I would say what's very important for an MK is involvement in the ministry and in the church. Keep the child involved, like not forcefully, but, bring them on outreach, bring them on the missions trips. And even, trying to be part of a ministry. It took me a little while, but I was looking for a ministry to be a part of. And once I became like part of a ministry, I really felt like now this church and these people, like they are part of me, and like it's my church. So I would definitely say involvement is very important for a missionary kid. And I even see it now here with Dennis and his children. They keep them involved, and they are thriving, and it's very encouraging to see that. So that would be my advice to a parent, would be like, keep your child involved in the church.
Let me put this to all of you real quickly as time is going. Sometimes they have this thing called artificial maturity. Artificial maturity is that you're exposed to things that you really shouldn't be exposed to. So you tend to have to grow up in a hurry at a young age. And oftentimes MKs have this artificial maturity because, as you said, and all of you said, you're part of the work. So you see things that maybe you shouldn't see. You hear things that maybe you shouldn't hear as a child because it's right in front of you. Case in point, maybe a physical, just different things. Have you sensed that, like you've been exposed to things that you weren't ready for, and not in the sense of exploratory, but in things that you wish you weren't? I'll start with you first, Dan.
I mean, I don't think so. There was only really one or two times where I was terrified on the missionary field, and one of them was during the revolution.
Okay.
When stuff was going on, rioters were breaking windows and stuff, and there was another time. But those times, even those times, I felt like we were in the plan of God, and my parents had that view, and yeah, it might have turned out differently, but I believe God protected us. So no, I think that everything that happened caused us to be more mature, but it was designed, it was purposeful, and I believe that it was very helpful to the way that I am able to interact with people, and sometimes, sometimes I can interact with people that you wouldn't think I would be able to because of those experiences. So it's a blessing. I think I see it as a blessing.
Seb?
I couldn't. I was trying to think about an instance where that happened, but I couldn't really think of one. I do want to make a point that maybe I've painted a picture like of rosy picture of what
Yes.
it was like on the mission field, and I would like to balance that maybe a little bit and say, I think everybody's childhood has really wonderful things about it, and things that are maybe painful or things we wished could have gone differently.
Mm-hmm.
And the mission field came with its pains for me, and it's left its scars in some way, in other ways, and so that's to be acknowledged and to be understood. It's not like we go on the mission field and we come out like these little people that have learned to trust God and now have faith and now can grow up to be invincible. It's not that way at all. We have learned. Maybe suffering a little more than others. Maybe we're more accustomed to it. We have seen people in real need, maybe more than people here have seen people in need. We kind of understand. I think our eyes have been opened a little bit more to a different culture, to understanding the differences between people.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't always come without a little bit of pain, a little bit of I remember one story. I'm not going to tell it, but that happened to me, and I think till maybe 10 years ago, it stayed with me and affected me in a lot of ways. But I think for the most part, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade any part of it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade any part of it.
Wow.
For sure.
Ruth?
An incident that would cause a maturity. Well, I can think of one. The church went through a split when I was in my teenage years, and that was a very difficult time. And I definitely had to mature a lot through that, because it was a very, very difficult time. But I learned a very important lesson on forgiveness.
Wow.
So I definitely can look back at the incident and see the good that came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely a very tough time.
Well, there's Daniel. Hold 1 second, Daniel. You're muted. There we go.
I'd like to add, like Seb did, about the kind of some perspective. I think one of the things that I've struggled with my whole life, and from the mission field, was finding good friends. I think that's very, very important to us as missionary kids, because many times we just grow up with the only reliable thing being family.
Wow.
And the only thing that we can count on is actually family. And it would be heartbreaking if someone, didn't have that on the mission field. That would be even worse for them. But for me, I think that one of the things I've struggled with my whole life was finding someone that not just connects and people that can be good friends, but people that really understand you and can be close friends that you can share some of these things with. And that's why I actually gravitated towards Missionary Kid chat rooms and kind of support and newsletters and such, because I felt only certain things only missionary kids could understand.
Understood.
Like between their experiences, and I have a little poem that I wrote about missionary kid experiences.
Wow.
And I can share that if you'd like to hear it, but gives you a little bit of that perspective of, okay, this is what we actually struggle with.
Wow. Well, I'd love to hear the poem, but the program is pretty much over.
Okay.
But I will revisit that one day. That will come back to that. But thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Seb. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on Missions Monday.